Hi, I'm George.
And I'm Chris.
We're with Aeroco. We're here to talk to you today about how to properly make a Cadweld exothermic connection. We're also going to show you a new product, Cadweld Plus. All right, Chris, is this all the stuff we need to make these Cadweld connections here today?
Yep, that's pretty much it, George. And it's pretty amazing when you think about it that using only a few lightweight pieces of equipment, we can go to a remote site and actually weld conductors together. It's pretty neat if you think about it.
Yes, it is.
There's no heavy hydraulic tools to keep track of. There's no dies to mess up. We don't even need electricity. Through the magic of applied chemistry, we're going to be able to make permanent electrical connections. So let's take a look at the components that we have sitting here on the truck. First thing that I want to talk about is safety.
Right.
There's only two pieces of safety equipment that Aeroco recommends that you use when making a Cadweld connection: safety glasses and gloves. Of course, common sense is also good to have. Your company may require you to have additional pieces of safety equipment such as a hard hat, or your job site may dictate additional pieces of safety equipment, but that's all that you need. That's all that we recommend.
Since we are here in this substation, maybe we should put our safety equipment on. I've got my glasses.
Right.
All right, Chris, I got the welding material out of the truck.
All right, thanks, George. Appreciate that. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to take you through in more detail each one of the components used to make a Cadweld connection. Give you a little bit more background on how each one works, how they all fit together. It's pretty easy. First thing that we're going to talk about is the mold. Now, each mold comes packed in a box, and on the label of the box there's some pretty important information, all the essential information that you need to know before you make your connection. The first thing that we want to point out is the part number. In this case, we're going to be making a PTC 2Q connection. We also have a description of the conductors that are being joined in the connection, along with a picture of the orientation of the connection. In this case, you can see that we have two cables being joined in a horizontal configuration. We also have the size weld metal that the connection requires. In this case, size number 200. Cadweld is what we call a pre-engineered system, meaning that in order to connect two 4-aught cables in this configuration, you're going to need 200 grams of weld metal. Anything less, you're not going to get a good connection. Anything more is overkill and you're paying too much. So let's open it up and see what we have on the inside. Now, the first thing that I want to point out is that each mold does come packed with instructions. And in fact, there's two sets of instructions that come with every mold. The first set of instructions, actually a pretty detailed description of mold setup, welding procedures, and safety precautions. We also have a pictorial representation of all the steps that are required to perform the Cadweld connection. So just know that they're there in case you need them. Moving on to the graphite mold. The mold tag on the mold basically has the same information that was on our box. We have the part number, a description of the conductors that are being connected, along with the weld metal size. If you ever need to get a hold of us, if you have a question about a mold, this is the basic information that we're going to require. Every mold comes packed with a mold clip that just keeps the two mold halves together during shipping. Inside the mold, every mold has the same basic components, starting here at the top with the crucible. And this is where our weld metal is going to sit while the reaction is taking place. Moving down here to the disc seat, this is where our little disc is going to sit. Then we have our tap hole, which is going to connect our crucible to the weld cavity, which is where our conductors are going to be held in place while the connection is being made. Now, the graphite mold is soft. In fact, it'll wipe off in your hands. The average life of a mold is about 50 connections. That's totally dependent on how the mold is cared and how it's cleaned. You want to make sure that you use only a natural bristle brush or something soft to clean the mold. The whole point is to keep the mold openings the same size as the day the mold was purchased. As these openings get bigger, weld metal will start to leak out of the mold when the connection is being made. That's when it's time to get a new mold.
So using the same brush to clean the cable and the mold is not a good idea.
No, absolutely not. Two different cables, two different applications.
Right.
Hey, the next component in our system is the handle clamp. Now, each handle clamp, when it's purchased new from the factory, comes complete with a flint igniter. Talk about that in a second. Most molds that we sell, over 90% of them, use the L160 handle clamp, which is right here. Purpose of the clamp, again, is to keep the mold closed while the reaction is taking place. And you can see that it just goes in the openings in the mold, tighten down the thumb screws, and you can see that you get a nice lock on the handle clamp. Now, if the handle clamp is out of adjustment, if it's too loose or if it's too tight, there is an adjustment mechanism here on the handle clamp. You can adjust the throw of the clamp, either make it tighter or looser. It's very important that before you make your first connection of the day, that you heat the mold up. Graphite is what we call a hygroscopic material, which means that it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. And even though it doesn't look wet, there's actually a good deal of moisture in the mold. And our Cadweld connection gets up to about 4,500 degrees, and that's going to turn that moisture into steam. It's going to give us a bad connection.
Right.
So we're going to take our torch and dry it out. And you can actually see the moisture that's coming off the mold. It's very important that we get this moisture out. A lot of times you hear guys say that their first connection of the day looks bad and they have to redo it. It's because they're not drying their mold properly before that first connection.
So that moisture that's in the graphite ends up in our connection.
Exactly. There you go. Very important to dry the mold. It's a cold, wet day here in Cleveland. There was a lot of moisture in that mold that we needed to get out of there.
Right.
Now that our mold is dry, we want to double check to make sure that the conductors that we're welding are clean and dry as well. We're making a Cadweld connection that's basically permanent. It's never going to loosen, it's never going to corrode, it's never going to increase in resistance. Take an extra couple of minutes to make sure that everything is clean and dry. That way you won't have to worry about messing the connection up. So let's go ahead, put our conductors in the mold. All right, good. Our conductors are in the mold. Now what we're going to do is take our disc. We're ready to make our next Cadweld connection.
Cool. What do you say we make our next connection a Cadweld Plus connection?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Let's go get our stuff.
All right. All right, George, here's your Cadweld Plus control unit. Can't wait to see how that works.
Right. I'll show you how it goes here. We're going to use the exact same mold that you used before. Luckily, since you just used it, I don't have to worry about warming it up or cleaning my cable. I did clean up the cable. All of those same procedures that you went through with your connection still apply to Cadweld Plus. The only difference is we're going to use our self-contained weld material package. The Cadweld Plus is color-coded to tell you size. The important information, as was on the box of our other welding material, also follows this unit so we can tell what the lot of the welding material was and the size of the weld material package, which is number 200, the same thing that you used in yours. So all we have to do is take our package and put it into our mold.
Where's the disc?
Ah, glad you asked. The disc is part of the body of the Cadweld Plus unit, so we don't have to worry about any other miscellaneous pieces parts. It's all right here.
Great.
So all you have to do is put it in. We have our control unit. Our control unit has an engineered clip that allows us to hook it up to the igniter strip. There's a line on the igniter strip that tells us how far to slide the end on, and it doesn't matter which way we put the clip on. There's no upside down, right side up, just a piece of cake.
Good.
The cover that you used before with the starting material works perfectly for our Cadweld Plus unit.
So I don't need a separate mold for Cadweld Plus?
Nope.
All right.
Our control unit uses standard AA batteries and probably will have a life of somewhere in the vicinity of 700 reactions. We have a light on the control unit that tells us when it's ready to go. All we have to do is press the button and let her rip.
Hey, George, I noticed that the control unit has a 6-foot lead. That must come in pretty handy when you're out in the field.
Yes, it does, especially if you're working a substation like we are today. If we were down in a ditch, it would make our life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that's nice.
So let's make this Cadweld Plus connection.
All right.
Press the button.
Just that easy, huh?
Just like that. So just like you did with your reaction, we want to wait a second or two to let the welding material solidify before we open up our mold and check out our results.
So there's no starting powder, no disc, no flint gun?
Nope. It's the same Cadweld reaction, just with a few less components and basically easier to do.
I like it.
A lot of the slag materials are contained in the Cadweld Plus unit. And we have the same Cadweld connection, our PT connection, just like you made.
Geez, George, I really like that. No distificate, no starting powder to blow away in the wind. You got a nice 6-foot core there. I really like it.
Yep, it's the same Cadweld connection, just a little easier to do, a few less components. Same quality. Well, I guess we're about ready to wrap this up.
Yeah, let's clean up the job site and head back to the plant.
I'm ready. Well, I think we've accomplished our mission today and shown the folks how to properly make a Cadweld connection.
Yeah, that Cadweld Plus is pretty neat. I can't imagine why anybody would want to use anything else.
Yeah, it's pretty slick.
Yeah. A couple things to keep in mind when you're making a Cadweld connection. Make sure your mold and your conductors are clean and dry, that you don't overuse your mold. Again, it's only good for about 50 connections. Once it starts to wear out, spend a couple bucks and get a new mold.
Let's go get some coffee.
All right, George, sounds good.